be a cable. So stay tuned. I'm going to try and go ahead and do this in 2 parts. I'll do the first part tonight because it is getting a little bit too late to be doing them, and so bear with me. I do have my coffee so I can stay awake, and we will go ahead and go through this a little bit, and so you understand how and what you want to do. So let's start with the dial. So the sweep second hand is going to come through here, and on most of the cable clocks, not all of them, but most of them, the cable clocks will have a sweep second hand. And if it doesn't, well, that's fine too. But the hand itself, if you just grab it here with your finger, the sweep second hand, you can pull it straight off. It's frictioned on. You undo the nuts, and this would be where your hour shaft comes through and your minute. These are your cranks right here. The far right one is your chime crank, and the time check crank, and then your strike crank. And some of these have slots like you see here, and that's where you change the different tunes of the chimes, and you can also turn it and put it on silent. So up here is your moon dial. You can go on Google and Google the moon dial, and it'll show you right here where to set this. Now let's go stop back a little bit. When you're working with your dial, please put gloves on. That's why I have these on. This is a brand new dial. I have, oh goodness, maybe 20 dials that are brand new because people touch their dials with their hands, and it eats through the lacquer, and it ruins the dial over a period of years. So try to remember to wear gloves when you're working on your clock, because you're going to take this dial off, and you really don't want your fingerprints on it if you can help it. if you watch it real careful, you can dust it off and make sure that the fingerprints are gone. So I mean, it's not life and death. So anyway, let's move on. So this is the brand new dial. So I'm going to turn it over. Now this has a moon dial. So it advances every 24 hours. And how it does that is through a series of gears. Now I gotta be very careful here because I don't want to scratch this dial. Okay, these are the gears. You see how there's a pin here, and it rolls around every 24 hours, and it moves the dial 1 notch. So that's how that's done. And then if you want to set the moon dial to where it's supposed to be, you can do that on Google. I don't remember the exact location of it. You'll have to just type it in and ask for moon dial settings. So now when the hour hand is protruding through here, there's a gear on the hour wheel, and that has to match this gear here. So if you've got your dial off and you're cleaning your clock, you've got to be very careful when you put this dial back on to move this just a little bit so that it lines up with the moon dial gear on the hour shaft. Or otherwise you'll push it against here and you could do some damage. Now it'll slip on there, and trust me, it will work. So you can, just with a little bit of patience, you can get that to work. And then this can be changed at any time. So right now I got my hands on it, so it's all right. So now we've got kind of going through that. So the pins on these clocks, they're all different. Hermel generally has a clamp that slips down over your let's see if we can get in here a little closer. To hold your let's just get one here. Okay, there is what we're looking for, is this little notch right here. You see how that's notched? there's a lever on the four corners of your clock, and you'll reach in through the side of it, and you can undo these levers, and you'll have to have somebody hold the front of the dial, and you take the four levers off, okay, and then the whole dial will come off through the front. And on the front, when you're looking at it facing the cabinet or your clock case, generally there's a wood frame that goes around the front of this. So it goes all the way around it. And it'll be 4 screws on that. You'll have to take the frame off. You'll have to slide the frame down past this, so you'll have to push that in just a little bit, and then it'll slide right on out. And that will expose the dial so that you can take it off. Then of course on the back side, you'll have four clamps that hold it on there. I'm sorry about that here. You'll have 4 dials on there, which you'll undo. 1, 2, 3, 4, and this will slide off. And you put it back on the same way by adjusting this little gear here so that it lines up with your moon dial gear on the shaft, the hour shaft. Okay, get rid of that for the time being. Now, this here is the gear that I'm talking about. This has to line up on that moon dial. So, and not all clocks have moon dials, but a good share of them do. So you'll have to make sure when you put the dial back on that you line that up. And that will definitely be a little bit of a chore, but it'll work. Now let's go up here. These are the 4 clamps. Let's go this way. There's one right here, one right here. You see these dial holes? And there's one on the bottom. I think this one does, yeah. So let's get it out of there. There's one right here. And there's one on the other side. Ruining my cleaning stick. Alright, so there you go. These are what hold it in position. And they generally come this way and this way. So you want to push them inward, and that releases the dial. So that's how that's done. Now on many of the cable clocks, you will be able to oil them, clean them, and tomorrow night, and I'll get that up on the air, so it'll be a 2-part series. If this is left in the clock and you can get to the front and the back, then you can clean it while it's on its upright position, which would be like this. And that is the best way to do these, because if you have to take it out, and I'm not saying that that's going to be a wrong decision, but the cables have a tendency, when you take them out, to tangle. And if they tangle up, then you've got to figure out how you're going to untangle them and restring them back through the clock. So there's a little bit more to do if you can't oil it and clean it from the back side. Now, some clocks have door panels on the sides, and if you're married and you got a wife or you have kids, you need them to hold a flashlight and stand on one side and open the door, the side door up, while you work on the other side of the door. And you use a mirror like this. You see how you can see your well, let's just drop it down a little bit. But the mirror will allow you, see it, let's just set it up, then your mirror with a little bit of the flashlight hitting your deal here, it's going to show you where your pivots are, and you can clean it from the side. Now, grant you it's a little bit more work, but it's well worth it, Both the front and the back have to be clean. You can't just oil it and expect it to be a running machine. We want to clean it first. That's where about 90% of these people out there make their mistakes, is they just buy some oil and they re-oil it, but they're not cleaning the gunk out of the pivots themselves. So what do we use? We use odorless mineral spirits. You can buy a small can from any of the hardware stores like Menards, and it's about, I think about $3, $3.50 for a small can of mineral spirits. I prefer odorless. It's kind of, when you're sitting there working on a clock, you really don't want to breathe that stuff in too badly. So now you're going to have a mirror better than a makeup case mirror. You're going to have to get a little bit bigger mirror than this one. I'll put this out front. This is it. Now you can see ours is getting tore up, and that's because we carry it in our case when we go out on the service job. So over the years it's just been beat to heck, but it still works pretty good, and we can get in through the sides and check to see what's going on with problems with the clock. You can literally come into the side of it, see how you can look at your side, and if you have somebody on the other side holding the flashlight and the mirror and adjusting it for you and not shaking it, it works pretty good. So that's how you get to clean a clock in the case when the back of the case doesn't open up. A lot of them do, so you can just literally undo the back and get at the back side of your clock as well as the front once your dial's off. Okay, now let's go into a little bit about the cables. That's this fella right there. So if your cable breaks, you can string it yourself. It's a bit of a chore, but it can be done from the bottom side of the clock if you have enough patience. If it needs to be let down and rewound because you got it out of the case, that's a lot easier to do while it's out of the case. You can let it down and then rewind it by holding it and letting it wind up the natural way, what I mean. So this is how this is just a winding gear out of a cable clock. I'm going to show you a little bit about this. Now, you gotta find this little tab right here. This is your ratchet gear, and you have to find that ratchet gear in order to push it down. And when you push it down, let's see if we can demonstrate. You can spin this without having any problem. As you can see, let that back up, and you see you can't move the cable. So let's go ahead and show you how this is done. This comes in here like this, and it strings this way. Once you get that started, you can spin it with your hands. But no, since I don't have this in a clock, it's a little different, a little different. No, I'm not going to spend time to wind it all the way up, but that would be how you would do this. See how I've done that? Now, a lot of times what happens is these get crossed over like this. See how it's crossed over that? That will stop your clock from running. And the only way you can keep it going is by putting a little pressure on the bottom weight and get it to start again. Or if it's a chime, you can trigger the chimes and see if you can get the cable to go around and unwind. If not, you're going to have to go find that little latch I showed you right here and let it down a little bit and then wind it back up. So that's why cable clocks are so much more difficult to work on than chain clocks. There's just a little bit more that can go wrong. Okay, so this is pretty much how you do that. Alright, that'd be about where you would loop this over and put your pulley on. So now, like I said, you can actually push the detent on this ratchet just right in here, and you have to find that, so you have to move this gear around by trying to manipulate it a little bit while it's in the movement. And once you push that, you see how I can pull that back out of there? Well, that wasn't supposed to happen, but that's the way it goes. So now that you understand that a little bit, so you want to put a little bit of grease. And I send you grease in the kits, and it's a special design grease. It isn't just everyday grease, so don't go out and buy lube grease. It's not the right stuff. It is too runny. It doesn't have any stick power to it. The grease that we sell you has a little I think it's a silicone base, and I can't, don't quote me on that because they don't even give me the formula. But it has a little stickiness to it, and when you touch it in here and here, here, and that's all you need, because once this ratchet runs around once, all these little gears are going to have oil on them. So you want to make sure that you get that in there. Now, you want to put a little dab of just your plain watch oil. I'd have to have a tube here. You want to put just a little dab in between that bushing right there. That's plenty, what I just did. And that is oiled properly. Now, on the back side, same thing. Put just a little dab of oil right there, and that was plenty. We don't want it to, see how that sucked right in there? And that's what we're looking for. So that's how you oil these gears. And once again, it can be done in the cabinet. So you have to find a little patience with yourself on this. So, all right, now we're going to get into the clock just a little bit tonight. So when you get your solvent cleaner and you'll get a couple of these bigger sticks here, and that's for the bigger areas. And you're looking for pivots. And these are the pivots. You'll see a little indent, and that's where a gear's at. That's a pivot. So there's a pivot right here, one right here. Now on these, you can drop a little bit of oil, and you can't clean these unless you want to take this piece out and pull the shaft, but I don't recommend doing that. Get you in trouble there. But you can put a little dab of oil right here, and right here. And that will work its way down through the shaft. But the rest of these, you just use the point of your cleaning sticks, and you just work that grease loose. But once you've worked it loose, you've got to go ahead and work it like this to get that grease out of there. And you don't be afraid to saturate your stick with mineral spirits. That's what we want to do. We want to get that all out of there. So I give you two different kinds of cleaning sticks. A couple of the big ones, and then I give you 4 of the smaller ones, and they're pointed, and they work really well for removing the dirt and stuff out of your deal. So these are the smaller pointed ones, and once again you dip them into your solution, and you just come up here and remove all the grease out of these pivots. There's one right here, one right here. Wherever there's a gear protruding through, that's where these are going to be at. One there, there's one right here. Okay, now on the back side, same thing. Well, you can see your gears a little easier. Now, this is your leader, and this hooks to the verge, and that has your escape wheel on it, your pellet fork. So you want to be real careful that you don't break this suspension spring up here. If you accidentally break one, we can get you one. We'd have to have a picture of the one you have, but we can. It has happened, and we have had to send a couple of them out. They're about $12, depending on which one it is. If it's these little simple springs, they're about $8 or $9, and you're going to have $3 or $4 shipping. I can't get you out of that shipping. But here are your pivots. One right there. Here's another one. There's one here. There's one there. One here. And these are you can get to these pretty much. You clean them with a little bit of mineral spirits on the 4th one. All right. And all these pivots in here. So this is I'm going to tell you that once you start a clock of this nature, you're looking at a couple hours to do it right. You can't just rush through it. Isn't a few seconds of oil and then expect it to work. Now you can get in here again with your cleaning sticks. These are so nice for that. These are just very thin, and in fact I even sell extra ones, 16 of them at a time, with 4 oil extractors. Now the oil extractors are for if you've over-oiled your pivot and you have oil that you can see it's built up over the top. You just touch it on that oil extractor, put it in a little alcohol, wipe it off, and it's ready to go to the next one. Those are reusable, so don't throw those blue, some of them are green, but they're the same ones, and most of mine are blue. Don't throw those away. Clean those and put them back in your box. And you can use it again for 3 or 4 times before they start wearing out. So these are your hammers. This is your strike. Now the hammers use that special grease again. And if you look at your hammers, you will see a little cam on the back side of that. And that's where you put your grease. Let's see if we can go to the back side here. Right here, you see these little cams? You put your grease right underneath there. And if you see the grease, you just about got too much. You just put a little dab on your stick on the pointed side of your greaser. I send you a little tool that you put the grease on, and you can get in from this side, and you can grease all these hammers. And it's really important to do that. You want to make sure you put a little grease right here. You want to put a little grease right in here. There's a little star gear here. You want to put at least 4 or 5 of those little stars on the very tip, so that those are greased as well. So most of these kind of clocks have a pretty good sized pendulum on them. And when you put them back in and you're ready to start the clock back up, you just bring the clock all the way, the pendulum all the way over to one side, the whole pendulum, and let it drop. And it'll come back and it'll swing this thing here, the leader, and it'll set the beat. So you'll have an even tick-tock, tick-tock. And that's how the beat's set on an adjustable beat on the grandfather clock. So tomorrow night we'll go ahead and go back through the oil procedure of this, and we'll check the cables, and we'll show you a couple tricks for holding your cable positions in the right place if you have to remove the movement from the clock. So hope this was educational for you, and you understand how and what I was talking about. So we'll say good evening to you, and tomorrow night I'll finish part 2 of this, showing you how to go ahead and oil it. So as always, I appreciate the comments. I appreciate you joining the channel with me, and hope that you have a wonderful Christmas, and everything, by all means, stay healthy. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow night.